Cool. So I think we're live.
Excellent.
So yeah, look, great to have you on the show. Show is over-grandizing it a little bit, but yeah, great to have you because you have been so active since we first connected through Veblen. Like your LinkedIn is just blowing up. Like you're everywhere on LinkedIn. So bring me up to speed. What are you up to?
That started back in December in Dubai, when you provided that very insightful. It was not a pitch, actually. It was sharing information. Actually, I like the way that you shared what was your observation of the market, board of directors, ESG. And for me it was like I never heard something like that before. So for me always was like kind of a career path, something that you would get if you were lucky or fortunate enough to be in a family that actually will have a company big enough to have a board. And then you see people that very young age in board positions. I say, how they manage to get that? And then you start to look around and say, oh, well, son, daughter, nephew, and say family, which is fine. It doesn't mean anything wrong, but actually is the way it is. And but I've been forming board of directors since 2016. So I formed for my own entrepreneurial journey, let's put it that way. I learned from a few mentors, actually, the way they accelerate credibility, knowledge, and expertise, connections, and resources, meaning capital or investment, etc. Was pretty much leveraging these experiences, these people that are retired, and that they've been ex big fours or big companies, PLCs, etc. And now they are a bit bored or they want to do something else. And that's pretty much how I formed 3 boards since 2016 to now. But I never literally applied for a board or anything like that. So my perception was like, oh, I had to put a board together to do business, but not really to how really boards operate, because they were so specific and to the point of a particular business that actually everybody was pretty much in sync. But none of these things like politics in the board of directors or the nuances of what is leadership, or what's accountability, or what is egos. Well, we have some of egos there playing around, but for me, it was everything very smooth and easy. Honestly, when I have this child, well, when you share this knowledge in Dubai with Veblen, I was like, I should get into this because it's a greater or a wider world outside that actually I'm not really capturing, if you may. And particularly with ESG, because I knew the term. We did reportings of ESG, but something that was pre-format, and the accountants did it, like, oh, we fulfill the obligation with this, and that's it, off you go. But nothing like it was driven.
Let me just stop you there, because I assumed that you had some kind of ESG background, because you've really kind of gone heavily into that. So do you want to just kind of, what has changed for you? Because oftentimes I think people have a perception of ESG, and then when they start to drill into it, that perception changes. So have you kind of, what sort of stood out to you as the bigger opportunities, or what have you been maybe disenfranchised with ESG? Because I know you've really gone sort of heavy into that space, which I think is, but that's super valuable to lots of companies now.
It's pretty much the lack of knowledge, literally. I heard the term, I delegated, if you may, like, okay, the accountants, the lawyer manage that, things, reporting, that's whatever, okay. And then actually in the same event in Dubai, I was ESG searching, and then I found a report from PwC that was from last year that actually 2 in 3 board of directors, something like that, the stats goes like that. They don't really know how to relate ESG with their own companies or their own strategies. They pretty much, oh yeah, we know that. Yeah, we have a subcommittee, or we have somebody that in charge, or we have a specialist, or we have an expert. But I thought, I said, but that's in my mind, I said, that's not very, I wouldn't say responsible, but I would say that was not very keen from somebody that have a responsibility of governance not to know what is governance in an environment where all their main responsibility is governance. It doesn't mean that they are doing things wrong, but it's a way that I operate. I want to know exactly, well, not exactly,
I think, yeah, just on that point, because I think that's really important, especially when people are talking to boards. And I've noticed this a lot over the years, is that oftentimes they're doing some stuff really well. They're just not articulating it in the way that the market is looking for. And that's where one of the things that I think you are positioning yourself brilliantly for. But generally, all of what we kind of teach at Veblen is oftentimes these small businesses are actually doing really, really cool stuff. But it's just a case of framing it and using the language and putting it into terms that investors or the regulators or governments can understand. Now, that's a real pain in the ass for directors, because they're not used to the language. They're not used to the terminology. So it's almost even worse that you're doing it right and you're not getting the credit for it. So for you to be able to go and say, hey, look, you're doing an amazing job. Let me turn this into something tangible for the outside world. Makes you super, super valuable. So I think that's really, really cool what you're doing.
Thank you. And pretty much that I think that you just summarized all the ideas that I have in the back about what is, and particularly I'm also inspired by you, I have to say, because you talk about how the valuable is SME space in the world. 80% of the economy is moved by SMEs, family companies, actually. So then I tried in the last month and a half, after learning all the big corporation ESG processes, systems, whatever they have, I say how this drill down to SMEs. And as exactly as you said, banking, for example, financing, capital, investment, etc. Now they are cascading that their own obligations and requirements that is mandatory for them, but not for an SME, but they're cascading that to them. And then they don't know how to articulate it. They say, yeah, I understand, I'm doing this, but I don't know how to report it. I don't have I don't have a track record of not of doing it, of reporting it. And that, I think, that is the key that where I'm looking into bring ESG into this environment, because it's exactly as you say. The people do it. Actually, a friend of mine they have a portrait photography studio. They are doing quite well. 12 employees, 2 branches, etc. And they are doing a lot of things, like in the indirect or direct scopes of ESG in terms of carbon footprint and gas. Well, pretty much they are saving energy, putting solar panels, bulbs that are related to LEDs instead of the others. And anyway, so they are doing a lot of things, but they did that as a saving process. But also for ESG, also is a way to report how you contribute to the environment, or how you go greener, or renewable energies, or more sustainable, or more well, anyway. So when I mentioned this to this lady, she was saying, I never occurred to me that actually I have to report that. I say, actually, you can make that a marketing strategy for yourself, for your customers too. And she was like, really? And that's incredible, because actually then the people start to capitalize the good intentions that they have. And I think that is amazing, because you can imagine if you have in a street a line of shops that they are showing to the public what they are doing. There is also an appetite for people to understand what the business are doing it for. Say, oh, you are responsible in your environment. You're responsible in how you work with your employees, or your supply chain. Like you're selecting fair trade, etc., etc. And also your company is conscious about that and report that, which is a part of the governance. It's not all.
Yeah, no, you completely hit the nail on the head, because I think that's why I was saying, like, a lot of these companies are already doing it. They're just not framing it, and I think the reason that they're doing it is, and this is where there's this weird disconnect with big companies, which is small companies learned years ago that they have to have a bigger why to what they're doing. Otherwise they just can't, like, they haven't got the money to attract staff, they haven't got the dollars to attract clients, so they need to rely on word of mouth. And you don't get that by saying, hey, I'm focused on the bottom line. You have to show that you're doing it for a bigger reason. So a lot of these companies were just naturally doing it because it was the right thing to do, and it was how they attracted clients. It's only when you kind of took that idea, and it was so weird. I remember going and talking to investors, proper sort of big institutional investors, when, like 10 years ago, when this was all sort of starting to come about, and I was talking about ESGs, like, very early on in that kind of conversation, but really about cause marketing and having an impact. And they were like, nah, not interested. Like, it's the companies are there to produce a profit for me. Now, if I choose to spend that money in philanthropy or whatever else, that's fine. I was like, forget that. Like, if companies don't have it, they're not going to be able to attract the staff. They're not going to be able to attract clients. So I think, and again, in terms of us selling our services as around ESG on the board, we have to frame it in terms of a way that businesses can see the value to themselves, and I think marketing is a great way of doing that. I think the other point you mentioned on, which is very, very spot on as well, is this idea of cascading reporting. So what governments have done is they've said, okay, we need more reporting around this. Now, there's some industries, like, actually, if you look at construction or very heavily regulated industries, they've got a lot of reporting already. It's already in there. But generally, it's the bigger companies that have to do the reporting, because it's too much overhead for the smaller companies. However, what the big companies do is exactly what you've said. They cascade it down. So the banks are doing that. They're saying, well, before we give you a loan or before you can open an account, we need to see this. But more and more companies are doing it for their clients, and completely unrelated. They're saying, look, before we will serve you, we need to know, what are you doing? And same with suppliers. Before we take you on as a supplier, we need you to fill in this ESG reporting. So it is actually cascading very, very quickly, even though the government reporting hasn't yet moved down to that smaller level. And the point we talk about, and I kind of joke about it, but it's very much tinged in truth, is that there is not a single board member anywhere on the planet that is rubbing their hands together and saying, ooh, more ESG reporting. Like, nobody wants to do it. So if you can put your hand up and say, hey, I'd love to take on this ESG reporting, I've got some frameworks, I know what the market is looking for, you're suddenly like, oh, thank God. So do the work. So yeah, I think it's a great space to be owning. And what's your core business, and how's that kind of relate to what you've been learning about ESG?
Well, my core business is merger and acquisition. So I started with rolling up cosmetic companies in a natural organic environment. That was back in 2016. At the time was kind of peeking into mainstream what is natural organic, particularly the labels, what was the ingredients, how were sourced, etc., etc. Then I moved into property, same thing, but actually most in construction, like rolling up stalled projects. So it was kind of a weird niche. So projects that were stalled in there, they had planning permission, they had the land, they had everything, but actually didn't have the funds. So pretty much I rolled up 19 projects in Dublin about that, and I put it through. With another board that I formed. Actually, I stepped out of that project at one point, And then when I moved to Spain, I started to look more into sustainable products like cardboard manufacturers or meals, because cardboard is one of the, and all this before even knowing what I know today. And thank you again to open my eyes to this, because I knew that something was changing, but I didn't know what and how. And when you start to understand how, it's quite impressive how things start to change very quickly. Sorry, how you can to articulate the things that you do much better. And I think that the narrative is very important, because then you say, this is what we do, how we do it, and why. And then people go, okay, so we have more information than 60% of people that come to us, particularly investors. So meals, I like cardboard because it's you can recycle cardboard 7 times more than actually aluminium or plastic. And also, and now I'm looking into distribution warehousing, commercial property in the UK for also roll up. Because I think that actually UK is still a massive European hub for goods, and particular big hubs like Gatwick or Heathrow or the Midlands airports or the ports, the Navy ports, still being a very, very interesting hub of commerce, and the tons of goods that are transferred across the UK is quite impressive, particularly some of goods that are coming from China going to the US or the other way around or into Europe. And UK, beside Brexit, is still being quite a very, very wealthy, in terms of business, a very wealthy country. I think that people sometimes complain about Brexit. I don't want to get into those things, but complain about Brexit, yesterday I had a very interesting call with a gentleman, and he said, we did a Berlin Wall around the UK, but it's surrounded by water instead of a concrete wall, and with Brexit. And I love the analogy, because it makes so many imaginary around that. And I say, but I don't think that is that crazy, put it away. But I like the way that he put it. But I say, well, you also have opportunities there. So I think that every entrepreneur look in these opportunities where other people don't see any opportunities. So I don't know, the reticular activation system, it goes like all crazy. I say, oh, look at this, look at that. So that's pretty much my core business is merger and acquisitions, roll-ups, and exits.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. And look, what I really like about it is that it also makes you very pragmatic. There are people that have embedded themselves in the ESG world, but it's very much from a theoretical place of this is what everyone should be doing. Whereas when you're in a small business space, as you are, and in that M&A space, we don't do things just because they're nice to have. We don't have that luxury. There has to be a reason behind it. So that's great to hear.
Yeah. Sorry.
Let me just move on, because I've asked everyone, I think, on this, because it just keeps coming up regardless. AI. How has AI impacted either you on the M&A side, or on building your profile, or on the ESG stuff? Is it making an impact yet, or is it still early days?
I think it's early days, mostly. I'm not very. I think that AI properly used is still for large enterprises with massive data lakes, not for and for. Okay, let me explain this. Before going into entrepreneurial full time, I worked for 2 big enterprises, worldwide recognized. One was SAP for 13 years. And the other one, and working SAP in the strategic office with Waldorf in terms of outsourcing, and then not only outsourcing things, also things that were outsourced, bring it back home. So it was a kind of a crazy idea, but actually, one thing that Germans have is a capacity of strategically planning. It's incredible. So anyway, for another day. And the other company that I worked for was Teradata, and Teradata is 46, 60 years old, 50 years old company. And the only thing that they do is to databases and analytics of databases. So they were working with machine learning and artificial intelligence as long as I remember them working with that. So like for the past 15 years, these things were already, and then you heard something like data scientists. I don't know if you heard the term of these guys. All these guys were using AI and machine learning before AI or ChatGPT came to the market, to the massive or to the masses, if you may, to available for everybody 2 years ago. So I've been working with this and I think in the environment where AI is very, very useful, like banking systems, like manufacturing, but large manufacturers like BMW or Porsche or Ford, that they analyze data to the point of welding. So to that point, so they monitor the robots, how they weld, to make sure that there's no gaps or air or bubbles, and for that you need AI, and it's very useful for that kind of things. Now, ChatGPT, you put a prompt and give you some responses. I think that is a sophisticated Google for the common user, by the way. And people will come but actually also in some companies I started to see now they are looking into AI to incorporate it in CRMs, for example, as a kind of a chatbot. So I think that that will increase efficiency on people rather than spending an hour training. Just put what you want. I say, I want a report of for example, I want a report of the past week sales of my team. These are reports. Before, managers spend a lot of time training on reporting and business intelligence. And I remember that because we spent hours doing that.
Yeah, so we're just about to do a big survey of public company directors about how they see AI impacting them. And I think my suspicion is that despite all the hype, not many of them have played around with it or got much experience of it. But if you think about, like, you come from a big company background, there's quarterly board meetings when everyone stops whatever they're doing to get data ready for the board, and we've got to get the board pack ready, and everyone's running around like a headless chicken.
Perfect example.
There's just no, so I think there's two things that I can see very obvious in the board space. One is that's got to stop. Like, AI should just be able to pull the data and present it well. The other thing that was happening with that was people never really knew what the board wanted. And so what they would do to cover their own asses is they would just give tons and tons of information. So you would end up with these board packs delivered to a board member 2 or 3 days before the board meeting. They're never going to be able to digest and go through. And again, AI's ability to kind of synthesize data and pull out the key points should, fingers crossed, make for a more productive board meeting and board process, I think.
Yeah, I 100% agree, because also to bear in mind, AI is the old adagio, garbage in, garbage out. It applies for AI too. So people think it's a magic bullet. I don't think it's a magic bullet. It's all the quality of data also, because AI, you can prompt whatever you want, but it's based on data. It's based on something. So if that something is already incomplete, corrupted, lost, or it cannot reach out to the end of the data lakes sometimes to recover all the information.
Yeah, I do wonder about, like, all these large language models that are trained on the internet, when so much of the content being spewed into the internet these days is coming from the large language models. Is it going to be like a snake eating its tail? Like, are they just their own content?
Yeah, and I'd say that it's a 50 different shades of gray of the same thing, because AI is so easy to rephrase the same thing that actually at the end, what is the real information? Or that's why I like to go to the sources many times. So that people, when post things, I say, where is the source coming from? And then and sometimes it's an article of an article until you find the real report, and then The whisper,
And
the Chinese whisper is it called?
Chinese
You see, so
whispers,
whatever you
yeah,
read
absolutely. The
originally, it
message
differs a
gets
lot from the
distorted.
original.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so. What I quite like, you do a lot of video content. I need to do more, but I always tell people if they're putting content out right now, you need to start it with, in my experience, or something happened to me, because otherwise people just assume that it's AI content now. So you need to make it that personal stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Fran, I'm going to have to wrap this up because this is just a short one, but this was a great chat and really, really interesting. So anyone that is watching this, and we'll be posting it, you can connect to Fran directly. But like I say, if you go and have a look at his profile and you go back through his posts, he really is the authority on all things to do with ESG, and he's got that M&A background, and so it's very much practical application. Which is super useful. So connect with Fran. If you have any questions, stick them in the chat, and both Fran and I will come back to the chat over the coming days and answer them. So cool, great to have you on it, and I'll have to find an excuse to come to Barcelona and visit you sometime.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you.